Hi everybody, I'm Didi from In the Know, and I'm here today with Igor Ledochowski. Hi
Hello.
Igor, thanks
Hello.
for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hi.
Hello everyone.
So Igor, I understand at one point you were a successful attorney.
Yep.
And you were working and doing all the things you do, making
Yep.
good money and whatnot.
Yep.
What is it that got you to leave that career and enter into hypnosis?
Well, I left as a relatively junior lawyer, and that was because I've been working at it's a very good law firm in the UK, and I was working really hard. I mean, 10 p.m. was my routine number. 3 a.m. was probably 2 or 3 nights a week was easily that kind of length, and every other weekend I'd probably be at work as well, which is fine for a while. Except I started getting more and more alienated from all my friends. They were all off doing fun things while I was at work. And more my whole life was being consumed by the whole law thing. And initially I signed up for a hypnosis course because I just needed something different, something to have a break from all this, just something that was totally different. And then I'd been doing some hypnosis before as a student, but I left it to pursue my career as a lawyer. Then when I go back into hypnosis, I suddenly realized, I really like this. I feel so much better when I am doing hypnosis than when I'm going to law firm and so on. And after a while of thinking it through, I figured out that income-wise, I could actually have very similar incomes if I approached it smartly. So once I worked that out, I resigned, worked out my notice, left, and the rest of the day is history. Yeah.
Great. And how many years have you been doing this?
Well, if you think in terms of when I first got exposed to hypnosis and so on, probably about 20 years. When we talk about more sort of professionally, I'd say about 15.
So
right?
for 15 years, you must have seen some pretty amazing things as a result of hypnosis.
Some amazing, some weird and bizarre, some frightening, and some just totally inspirational, absolutely.
So what are let's begin with the most inspirational things you've seen.
Sure. Well, actually, I'll tell you the most inspirational things I've heard because they're just amazing. We're here, of course, at HypnoThoughts, lots of hypnotists, and they've shared a ton of stories with me about how they've used conversational hypnosis and things like that.
By the way, Igor teaches conversational hypnosis. So.
Thank you. So we had, for example, one lady, and we'll call her Jane, who took in an abused child, a young girl, 14 or 15 or so, who had been sexually abused. Her father actually had rented her out to his friends, so not the nicest of things.
Yeah.
So she took her in kind of as a fosterling or something to take care of her. And really all she did was provided a nice safe environment for her, food, shelter, a loving environment sort of to grow in. And but then that's as far as the girl was concerned, because she didn't trust adults at all, and quite rightly so, right? But then as the day went by, from time to time she would tell a little story here and a little story there, and then the stories got more elaborate, and of course the little girl would be really interested and get more hooked. She'd tell a story about herself and stories about the animal kingdom and so on. And these were all hypnotic stories.
Sure.
So that bit by bit over the years, she gradually started to erode all the trauma which came around with the abuse. I mean, you should know that this girl, before she came and stayed with Jane, she was in and out of hospital every few months, right? I mean,
did she have like pains and aches, or
no? She had psychotic breaks. She would go crazy. She would take a crazy amount of drugs and then get checked in and have her stomach pumped, and then they would ship her to the psych ward because she wasn't coping. She'd have basically a mental breakdown, right? Because she didn't have any coping mechanisms. She was never really safe before. So of course, when she stayed with Jane the first year, the episodes reduced, but she still has a number of hospital visits. And the second year, every now and again there's a few hospital visits. By the third year, the hospital visits really have become a thing of the past. It gets close a few times, but not really. And then, of course, the drug and alcohol abuse, that's now the next step that she's focusing on. So long story short, after about 4 or 5 years of just a really loving, caring environment, and within that environment, just continuously telling stories here and there, just casually, just as you go through your day, you're cooking something, you're doing something, going shopping, little stories. And I swear to God, you would not recognize this girl. She's a wonderful, vibrant, bright, confident young lady. She still has issues like every teenager does. She still makes mistakes, but those are normal mistakes. Those are normal, young adult mistakes to make. The drug and alcohol abuse have stopped. She hasn't had a hospital visit in over 2 years. She's laughing and smiling. She's trusting adults, including adult males. I'm an adult male, of course. So when I visited the first time, she basically ran away and hid. And she would not talk to me. She was just really, really quiet. And of course, it's understandable why. So by the time, the last time I saw them, she'd sit down on the couch, she'd chat with me, she'd even tease me, she'd jump out to try and scare me. So really normal teenage behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is just an amazing story of the force for good that people can have with hypnosis.
And you do have that, like you talk about that through every course. This is to be used for a force of good.
Yeah.
And why do you believe that should be?
Well, like anything, the tools are tools, right? Tools are neutral. A car can be used to, save someone's life, drive them to the hospital to save them. And a car can be used to run someone over so that someone else has to take them to the hospital to save them, right? Same thing with a knife. You can prepare your food, which is great, your children eat, or you can be used, and it has been used, in a more violent sort of way. And the same is true of any tool, any psychotherapy tool, drama tool, anything you want to have. Teachers have abused the teaching positions and so on. And I want to, you see, hypnosis has a lot of mythology around it. A lot of people think, ooh, so much power, right? And people turn up naively thinking, almost innocently, at least I'll get power, and then I'll be okay again, right? The problem with that is they end up making mistakes. They don't understand just how powerful the tool really is.
Yes.
And if you use it trivially, right, then you can do a lot of damage, not just to the other person, but to yourself as well, because, it's really hard to overcome the guilt of really damaging another human being when, you just wanted to be selfish about something and you totally forgot about the other person, the relationship, because hypnosis augmented it. You might have got what you wanted temporarily, but in the long run, you harm that relationship so badly, it's not even worth it, right? And I want to warn people about that. I want to show them to treat this tool with respect. You have to get a license to drive a car because we don't want people running over old ladies and children, right? And with hypnosis, it's the same. We want to make sure people approach this subject with respect and a good heart, so to speak, because it is very powerful, and they need to know, like a car, if you just drive around doing donuts for the fun of it, you may hit something or someone, and that's you doing that damage. And if you don't get warned of it ahead of time, the fantasies can take over in people's minds, and they don't realize, hang on a second, all right, I best stick to what I know will be positive and life-enhancing for everyone. And then that makes a really happy and healthier world around us. And just for the record, all the students that I'm still in contact with, of course, who have shared the stories, like Jane, for example, not only are they a tremendous force for good, but actually there is also, bottom line, there's a dollar figure that comes with that. Sure. Their careers have progressed, their businesses have blossomed, because the attitude itself really draws people into you, because they can trust you now. So, being a force for good is both an altruistic thing to make the world a better place, but it's also a really selfish thing. It is hands down the number one easiest way of building success.
And feeling good about doing it.
Absolutely.
So what are the crazy things, because you see inspirational but crazy,
right.
What are the crazy things you've seen?
So we had a lady who came to one of our courses, and we did the mind-bending language thing, which is quite trippy, right?
It's trippy.
And she was
she
was a hyper-intellectual. So when she started the mind-bending language, it freed her from the tyranny of that intellect, right? Because she was always trapped by that. And she liked the kind of trance she went into. The problem is she decided not to come back, even though we made sure everyone come back and we'll reintegrate the lesson so you can have a rich but stable life, right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, she purposely ignored it, and when we pulled her back, she faked coming back, but she really stayed there. Long story short, she kind of went into a, closer and closer towards what would be traditionally called a psychosis. And for the first few days, this was fine. She was in absolute nirvana, total bliss, absolutely loving the world. She became very powerful as a hypnotist. I mean, she was walking through the streets down with a nightclub district, grabbing bouncers away from the door and trancing them out in seconds to the point that we're passing out on the floor, because she had such a powerful altered reality around her. And she, of course, really liked that. That reaffirmed for her to stay in this altered state for longer. The problem is, because she didn't ground herself, she started getting further and further disconnected from reality. And at one point, she got scared because she got too far from what's known. Yeah. And of course, that's when she admitted, oh, I've done something really bad, help. So of course, it wasn't a huge deal. It took just a little bit of time to get her back, and then a couple of days for her to kind of feel settled inside her body again. So it wasn't a big deal, but definitely seeing someone who's close to a psychotic break is a pretty interesting thing, right?
Yes, and I wasn't even aware that people could stay in a trance for days on end like that.
Sure, they can. It requires a lot of motivation for starters. And
she had it, is what you're saying, because she
absolutely
enjoyed the state so much. It made her feel so powerful and took her away from that rigidity that it was a pleasure for her to stay in it. Igor, if you were to leave our audience with one thing regarding how they could take care of this amazing thing we call our unconscious mind, how they could nurture it, what would you want to leave them with?
Okay, one word: self-compassion. Right? If most people treated their friends the way they treat themselves, we wouldn't have friends. Right? We tend to be much harder on ourselves than we're on the rest of the world. And the problem with that is it divides us. It pushes us away further and further away from our unconscious. By the way, our friendly psychotic friend there, that was her problem. She was so intellectual and she was so hard on herself. She got so divorced from her unconscious, which is where all the vibrancy and all the life of life comes from, that she fell dead inside. And of course, when she went through the mind-bending language stuff and that divide dissolved, she fell in love with herself again. And that's what was so wonderful. The problem is, she thought the only way she could have that relationship with her unconscious was deep, 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 deep in trance. And that's not the case. The deep in trance allows you to get past the mental blocks you normally have. But if you treat yourself kindly, if you make a mistake and go, okay, it was a mistake, and well, I'll do better next time, right? So you don't just go, oh, I'm okay, that's fine. You don't ignore mistakes, but you be kind to yourself. Think of how you treat a 5-year-old child if they make a mistake. It's like, no, we don't do that. We do this, right? That self-compassion heals a lot of those rifts. And the closer we heal that rift, the closer you come together again, the more the joy of life comes back, the more the power that even this other lady experienced comes back, because the joy, the power, all the juice comes from the unconscious. The direction, the intellect, and the focus comes from the conscious.
Right. That's great wisdom. Thank you so much, Igor.
You're very welcome.